Stories of remembrance. From the relatives of the Air India victims to the Irish captain who tried to rescue survivors.
I don't like coming here. It's difficult to see the people who are left behind and they're still grieving.
Canada's top leaders pay respect as 20 years later the pain of still not knowing who killed their loved ones cuts deep.
From our National News Center, Global National, here's Kevin Newman.
Hindu chants filling the air on a beach on the southwest shore of Ireland. A prayer of remembrance for the 329 innocent souls who lost their lives off the Irish coast on this day 20 years ago. The dead passengers and crew of Air India Flight 182, many of them Canadian, the apparent victims of Canadian Sikh extremists pitched in a battle half a world away. Hello and thank you for joining us. Canada's worst act of terrorism tonight front and center for the families of the victims. In the 20 years since the bombing, only one man, an electrician from British Columbia, has been convicted of making bomb parts. Two others, the focus of a 15-year police investigation, were acquitted in March. And since then, the victims' families have been demanding Prime Minister Paul Martin hold a public inquiry, a call for action they repeated on this emotional day. Global BC's Samantha Falk is covering this for us near Cork, Ireland. Samantha?
Kevin, by all accounts, June 23rd, 1985 was a beautiful sunny day. But today, the skies were gray and rainy, reflecting the somber mood of today's ceremony. It's been 20 years since that day, but the emotions ran as if it was yesterday. Friends and relatives of the victims came early to pay their respects. Also here were hundreds of locals from County Cork who had been profoundly affected by this tragedy, like Captain Jim Robinson, who was at the helm of the ship that ran the recovery mission.
Very quickly realised that there would probably be no survivors.
I don't like coming here. It releases all things that I keep boxed up. So it's difficult to see the people who are left behind and they're still grieving.
The service itself began with prayers. Then at 8:13 a.m., the exact time of the disaster, a moment of silence. All of Canada's national leaders attended, and throughout the ceremony, the victims' families held out hope that Prime Minister Paul Martin would today announce a public inquiry.
Make no mistake, the flight may have been Air India's. It may have taken place off the coast of Ireland, but in so many ways, this is a Canadian tragedy.
In his speech, Martin declared this a national day of remembrance for victims of terrorism, but fell short of calling for the inquiry.
It's 20 years and it's feeling very frustrating that we still are, it's hurting so deeply.
If the Canadian government and the RCMP, after 20 years or 15 years of investigation, couldn't get enough evidence, then I'd like to know, what actually is the truth.
The ceremony ended with 329 balloons being released into the sky, one for every victim. Then the same number of paper lanterns were set afloat in the Atlantic, the same waters where Air India Flight 182 and its passengers came to rest. Although most of the families will now be making their way home, some have decided to stay in the area to give them a chance to mourn in private, away from the glare of the media spotlight. Kevin?
Samantha Falk in Ireland. Thanks, Samantha.